Ryan O'Dowd, and you're listening to Ryan's Audiobooks on the Issues Magazine YouTube channel. Today I'm continuing with section 619. We're finishing chapter 11, the holistic neurosomatic circuit. Endorphins are neurotransmitters that trigger circuit 5. They can be activated by cannabis drugs, psychedelics, meditation, pranayama, or visualization of white light. The last is the most common system used by faith healers and was known to the medieval Rosicrucians. There's nothing supernatural about the Fifth Circuit. It merely appears supernatural by comparison to the earlier circuits. But the Third Circuit, of which the rationalist is so proud, undoubtedly appeared supernatural when it first appeared. The Egyptians attributed speech and writing, Third Circuit functions, to divine intervention by the god Thoth. The Fifth Circuit, like earlier circuits, is just another evolutionary mutation, necessary to us as we move toward a more complex neurosocial level. It's just like ordinary life, except that you're always a foot above the ground, says an old Zen proverb. The floating aspect of the Fifth Circuit is preparing us for extraterrestrial migration. One of the most interesting neurosomatic adepts in all history, from the viewpoint of the present theory, was Mary Baker Eddy. Precisely because Mrs. Eddy was fundamentally naive and unaware of most philosophy, she never realized that you cannot speak or write about the ineffable. She therefore wrote about it at length. If her writings are harder to decipher, if they often sound like the ravings of a disordered mind, Aleister Crowley's description of his mystic writings, including his own, they also have moments of astonishing lucidity. For instance, she knew and wrote with total clarity that illness is fear and love is its cure. Most psychologists are just beginning to comprehend that today, over 100 years later. Perfect love casteth out fear, and that is how neurosomatic awakening cures disease. As Mrs. Eddy told one inquirer, love, love, love. That's all you have to know to be a healer. 60 years later, unheeded by most of his profession, a Scottish psychiatrist, Ian Suddy, wrote that the physician's love heals the patient. Another quote from Mrs. Eddy is appropriate at this point. When understanding changes, we shall gain the reality of life, the control of soul over sense. This must be the climax before harmonious and immortal man is obtained and his capabilities revealed. To the ordinary scientifically educated reader, this is metaphysical gibberish. Let us try to retranslate it into our own neurological metaphors. When the brain develops its full potentials, we shall gain a new view of life and the control of neurosomatic bliss over lower circuit guilts, perplexities, emotions, and body symptoms. This is evolutionary scheduled to occur before the Sixth Circuit evolutionary awareness and physical immortality are achieved. We suggest that Mrs. Eddy, having activated a large part of the right brain hemisphere, was able to think in gestalts, as well as serving as transmitter of neurosomatic healing to others. She was looking down the DNA highway to the scientific breakthroughs of the decade in which we now live. Many have turned on the neurosomatic circuit due to prolonged illness, especially if they grow impatient with doctors and resort to self-medication and faith healing. The bathroom of Nietzsche, according to Stefan Zweig, looked like a pharmacy shop, due to the large number of drugs and medicines with which the philosopher treated his chronic migraines. Gurdjieff employed cocaine, hashish, and yoga techniques, probably including pranayama, to treat the incessant and increasing pains resultant from his war wounds and 2 car accidents. The harshness of these two philosophers, their contempt for ordinary human suffering, their visions of the superhuman state beyond emotion and pain, all probably derive from neurosomatic turn-ons alternating with acute pain. That is, they experienced the whole of evolution from the lower circuits to the full development of neurosomatic bliss, and were expressing chiefly contempt for their own relapses into less than blissful consciousness. In the East, the control of the neurosomatic circuit is known as dhyana, shan, or zen. The state is sometimes called Buddha mind or Buddha body. To the ancient Greeks, where rituals to achieve it with psychedelic drugs were performed yearly at Eleusis, those who accomplished the ritual successfully were called daijins, twice born. The metaphor lingers in the born-again terminology of the charismatic Christian, and is symbolized by the myth of the resurrection of the body. Freud recognized this state vaguely as the oceanic experience. Gurdjieff calls this circuit the magnetic center. Faith healers and adepts of a few yogic schools seem to live in neurosomatic consciousness permanently. Most who have achieved it at all tend to have it only in flashes, as noted by Ezra Pound. La perdis ne se artificial, but it is jagged for a flash, for an hour, then agony, then an hour. This paradise, this condition of neurosomatic mind-body peace, should be considered a new brain circuit toward which all humanity is evolving, slowly and painfully, out of mammalian antique circuits. This progression from primate emotion to post-hominid tranquility, from man to Superman, is the next step that mystics forever talk of. You can hear it in most of Beethoven's later, major compositions. As mentioned before, governmental brainwashers are generally too puritanical to handle or manhandle the socio-sexual circuit and content themselves with mind-washing and brain programming on the biosurvival, emotional, and semantic circuits, while outlaw bands like the SLA or Masonoids go further and re-imprint the socio-sexual circuit also. It's necessary to note that some cults presently active on this backward planet go even further than that and engage in neurosomatic brainwashing. A permanent neurosomatic circuit can only be imprinted by prolonged practice of one of the yogic, tantric, or related sciences, and perhaps good genes, good environments, and good luck generally. Neurosomatic brainwashing, the most powerful form of robotization, consists in temporary activation of the neurosomatic circuit by the brainwasher, together with assurances that only the brainwasher, or the God who acts through him, can turn on this circuit. For full effect, this is of course preceded by normal brainwashing. The victim is first isolated from his or her previous environment and trained to hook the biosurvival circuit onto the guru and or the ashram or commune. The emotional circuit is bent and broken by continuous attacks upon status until the only emotional security left is found in total submission to the group reality island. The re-infantilized victim is then ready to imprint any semantic circuitry desired, from psychological cults, political cults, religious cults, etc. The socio-sexual circuit can then be programmed for celibacy, for free love, or for whatever game the guru has selected. Then and only then, the neurosomatic buttons are pushed and ecstasy is given to the subject by the guru. Marjo Gortner, a longtime practitioner of this science, commented ironically in a film made after abandoning it for a different career, "The marks never realized they could do it, push the neurosomatic buttons for themselves. They all think they need me jacking them off." Gortner is nowadays unusually honest. The average charismatic insists that the victims can never learn to do it for themselves. One of the greatest historical practitioners of this neuroscience was Hassan I-Sabbah, who used relatively simple techniques, including evidently a time-release capsule invented by the Sufi College of Wisdom in Cairo. As I describe Hassan's technique, based on historical records, in my novel, The Trick Top Hat, 2 young candidates dine with Hassan. The food is laced with a time-release capsule. When asleep, the candidates are taken to Hassan's famous Garden of Delights. The capsule had released a heavy dose of opium, and they were quite thoroughly unconscious and unaware of their surroundings. The garden, officially known as the Garden of Delights, covered several acres. Here candidates were prepared for admission to the Order of Assassins. They were to become the most feared and legendary professional killers in history. But here also, in this same garden, were prepared candidates for admission to the Brotherhood of Light, the Illuminati. The candidates, in fact, were prepared the same way. They themselves selected, unknown to themselves, which order they would enter, the political assassins or the mystic Illuminati. Both young men were conveyed into the Garden of Delights and placed several acres apart from each other. In a short time, the second stage of the time-release capsule began to work. Cocaine was released into their bloodstreams, thereby overwhelming the traces of the soporific opium and causing them to awaken full of energy and zest. At the same time, as they woke, hashish also began to be released, so they saw everything with exceptional clarity, and all colors were jewel-like, brilliant, and divinely beautiful. A group of extremely comely and busty young ladies, imported from the most expensive brothel in Cairo, sat in a circle around each of the young candidates, playing flutes and other delicately sweet musical instruments. "Welcome to heaven," they sang, as the awakening men gazed about them in wonder. "By the magic of the holy Lord Hassan, you have entered paradise while still alive." And they fed them paradise apples, oranges, far sweeter and stranger than the earth apples they had known before. And they showed them the animals of paradise, imported from as far away as Japan in some cases, features far more remarkable than those ordinarily seen in Afghanistan. "This is heaven," the first young man exclaimed in ecstasy. "Great is Allah, and great is the wise Lord Hassan-i-Shaba." But 20 acres away, surrounded by similar lovely ladies and other wonders, the second young man merely gazed about him, smiled in contentment, and said nothing. And then in both cases, the Houri of paradise, as promised in the Quran, began to dance, and as they danced, they discarded one by one each of their 7 veils. As the veils were thrown off, more and more hashish was released from the capsules, and the young man saw with greater clarity, felt with deeper intensity, experienced beauty and sexual joy in a way completely unknown in their previous earth lives. Then, as each young man sat entranced by the beauty and wonder of heaven, the Houris finished the dance, and nude and splendid as they were, rushed forward in a bunch like flowers cast before the wind, and some fell at the candidate's feet and kissed his ankles. Some kissed knees or thighs, one sucked rapidly at his penis. Others kissed the chest and arms and belly. A few kissed eyes and mouth and ears. And as he was smothered in this hashish-intensified avalanche of love, the lady working on his penis sucked, and he climaxed in her mouth as softly and slowly and blissfully as a single snowflake falling. In a little while, there was no more hashish being released, and more opium began to flow into the bloodstream. The young candidates slept again, and in their torpor, they were removed from the Garden of Delights and returned to the banquet hall of the Lord Hassan. There they awoke. "Truly," the first exclaimed, "I have seen the glories of heaven as foretold in Al-Quran. I have no more doubts. I will trust Hassan-i-Shaba and love him and serve him." "You are accepted for the order of assassin," said Hassan solemnly. "Go at once to the green room to meet your superior in the order." When the candidate had left, Hassan turned to the second, asking, "And you?" "I've discovered the first matter, the medicine of metals, the elixir of life, the stone of the philosophers, true wisdom and perfect happiness," said he, quoting the alchemical formula, "and it is inside my own head." Hassan-i-Shaba grinned broadly. "Welcome to the order of the Illuminati," he said, laughing. Hassan-i-Shaba was not the first or last student of the ways in which sexuality can be transmuted into Fifth Circuit rapture. Further to the east, there were tantric schools within Hinduism, Buddhism, and Taoism, which taught techniques by which prolongation of the genital embrace could explode into dramatic brain change. In the West, underground cults of Gnostics, Illuminati, alchemists, and witches kept similar techniques as closely guarded secrets, for if the Holy Inquisition ever learned of such practices, the participants would be denounced as devil worshippers and burned at the stake. In our own time, there's been a revolutionary upsurge of these ancient neurological secrets, with an admixture of more modern techniques. Tantric teachers are available in many cities. Masters and Johnson use quasi-tantric practices to treat sexual dysfunctions. As early as 1968, a poll by McLaughlin showed that 85% of the pot smokers in the country said their chief interest in the weed was its function as an enhancer of erotic sensation. Vibrators and other sexual toys proliferate. Gays come out of the closet. Philosophers of culture without repression, Norman Brown, Henry Marcuse, Charles Reich, become bestsellers. Saul Kent, a writer on medical science for general audiences, has even suggested that electronic sexual surrogates can and will be manufactured in the near future. Your own Marilyn Monroe doll. Instead of joining Tom Wolfe and the Neo-Puritans and throwing up our hands in horror at such an idea, let us consider it for a moment. Let us see if we can peek outside our imprinted conditioned reality tunnel. If a sexual android is possible in 2005 or 2050 or whenever, why not a totally programmed sexual environment? Let us call this, in memory of Hermann Hesse, the magic theater. We start with what is concurrently available in high-priced brothels in the hedonic Sunbelt section of America. Massage, a First Circuit tranquilizer, has all the advantages of the opiates without being habit-forming. Our magic theater, then, would include computerized body relaxers and energizers better than current massage techniques. Porn movies are available for stimulation in the better brothels. Our magic theater would have them in 3D on all 4 walls, obviously. Marijuana and stimulants like cocaine or speed are available in brothels everywhere. Our magic theater would have better chemical rapture agents. One could go on adding details according to personal fantasy until one has created a room in which bliss can be extended in all dimensions indefinitely. A strange thing is happening constructing this cyberneticized brothel. we seem to have gone beyond sex to something that might be called metasex. While specific genital pleasure might still be fun, it's hardly as important as it deemed to us before we came into the multidimensional pleasure dome where all senses are stimulated to ecstasy. And the most peculiar thing about this bawdy science fiction projection is that we don't even need to build a magic room. It's built in our brains already. We've been describing the positive neurosomatic consciousness, which Freud called polymorphous perversity in one of his Puritan moods, and the oceanic experience in one of his mystical moments. This is what the neurosomatically turned-on brain feels like. In alchemy, this was known as the multiplication of the first matter, or the philosopher's gold, which was unlike ordinary gold in that it could not be spent or used up, since it perpetually multiplied and renewed itself. It is the third eye of the Illuminati tradition, which transforms all it sees, the eye of which Jesus speaks in his gnomic aphorism. The light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body will be full of light. Exercises. Get the lesson book from the local Christian Science reading room and read the lessons for a month. 2. Attend a Sufi weekend seminar. 3. Acquire my book, Sex and Drugs, A Journey Beyond Limits, and try the tantric exercises there described. 4. Learn how to do pranayama properly from an expert. I have tried describing this elsewhere, and have found there is no way to prevent gross errors in verbal transmission of this nonverbal knowledge. Get a Hindu to show you. 5. Dafri John, an American guru, says you can reach illumination by constantly asking, who is the one who is living in me now? Well, is it Circuit 1 consciousness, Circuit 2 ego, Circuit 3 mind, Circuit 4 sex role, Circuit 5 gestalt field, or a higher circuit? Who is it? Where is it? How old is it? 6. Dr. Aidan Kelly has suggested that the so-called unconscious is a more conscious than the so-called conscious mind. That is, the unconscious contains all the feedbacks of the neurosomatic circuit and the other circuits that maintain life. Consider this idea. Is this the one who's living in you now? Thus concludes section 619 of Prometheus Rising by Robert Anton Wilson, chapter 11, the holistic neurosomatic circuit. Tomorrow we start with chapter 12, the collective neurogenetic circuit. I will see you then. Alam.